Malcolm McDowell, you guys just wrapped up the third season of your critically acclaimed show, Mozart in the Jungle, on Amazon. It's funny saying that, Mozart in the Jungle on Amazon. Anyway, you guys are really gelling now in that third season. What was the experience like going into season 3 for you guys after 2 successful seasons?
It was, of course, great to be back. Doing a series like this is a bit like school. And then, when you finish the season, then you go home for the holidays. And we're about to get back in 2 weeks to start shooting season 4. But season 3, we opened in Venice, Italy. So it was kind of strange to be in a different culture and this stunningly beautiful city with 1 million tourists, and all these cruise ships sailing by the hotel. It was kind of weird, but very enjoyable. And, we had that Monica Bellucci was amazing and very beautiful. And so, yes, it was great to be back. And then, of course, our home port, as it were, is New York. So we got back and then just carried on as normal. So, I really do love doing a television series because you really do get a chance to explore way more a character and go into different areas than you can on a movie, which is basically 95 minutes and that's it.
Speaking of which, what are some of the ways that Thomas, your character, has grown and developed this season since the first 2?
Well, I think that at first, when he was kicked upstairs, that he was really angry. I mean, there's no other way around it. He was furious that a man of his talents and disposition could be usurped by a younger man. And he found it very difficult to believe because, he understood that to get a charismatic young guy in, hopefully will bring in a younger audience. And that's what they wanted. And that's what they got. So for hating Gael Garcia Bernal's character, Rodrigo, hating him in the first season, to then being a mano a mano and being kind of friends and colleagues. And that's where we are now in the third season. But the fourth season, I think, is going to be slightly different. So we'll see what happens.
Why do you think the dynamic changed so much between you and Rodrigo? Is it a certain amount of respect that you gained for him or that he has for you? What do you think causes that relationship to grow?
Well, I think you've hit on it. It is respect. And of course, the initial thing is one of, I hate that guy because he took my job, basically, to, he's not bad. I mean, I do it better, but he's not bad. So you get this slight softening, and then you get the thing that binds them and always will bind them is the love of the music and the respect to the composers and the geniuses that have written this stuff, since the 16th, 17th century. And I think that's why they're such brothers, is that at the end of the day, they want the same thing, great music.
You mentioned the love of music, and that's one of the great qualities of this show, is that it really does celebrate music and celebrate art in general. Can you talk a bit about that?
Yes, I honestly think that, of course they cherry pick the most marvelous bits of classical music, but the music is absolutely fabulous. And we've even now, Thomas is even getting into, weird kind of electronic stuff, which is kind of fun. So I think we're going to carry that through to this season. So that'll be cool. But of course, it's not about classical music, but classical music is very much a character. Mm-hmm. and an adorable one, you know. And if we can just get a few people, a few young people interested in classical music, then all to the good. Then we're thrilled.
You mentioned your character dabbling in electronic music. I wonder if you could talk a little bit more about that.
Well, yes, you know, Thomas is trying to reinvent himself, just like Madonna. He's trying to be relevant, you know, so he figures, well, this is what kids like. Let's see, I'll go do that. And of course, at first, he's horrified at how horrible it is, but then he kind of gets into it a little bit and starts to understand it, and then really gets off on it. And then he loves it when it's a huge hit. Of course, in Korea, but still, huge hit.
Right. You guys have such a great cast in this show. You mentioned Gael, and there's also Bernadette Peters and Lola Kirk. What is it like working as an ensemble? What is that dynamic like?
Well, of course, you know, what you see is what you get. And we're all very good friends by this point, and it is a family, you know. I love Bernadette. We have so much fun together. We giggle and laugh the whole time on set. We love working together, and I think the chemistry is there for all to see. But and Lola, she's a wonderful little actress, you know, and tremendously talented. So, you know, we've got and all the orchestra, and you know, they're all fantastic actors. So we're very lucky, very lucky. Great, and we've got great scripts. That's the main thing.
I wanted to ask you about the creative team as well. I mean, starting with your creators, Paul Weitz, Jason Schwartzman, and Roman Coppola. What do they give you, actors, that really helps facilitate you? And
I'm going to add another name to that trifecta, and that would be Will Graham, who came in last year and is part of the team now. They're amazing. They bring, of course, very different qualities. Roman is a fantastic director, and his particular episodes I always look forward to. They're always very interesting and edgy. Paul, of course, is he's the one really that cast me, I think, and he's a great friend, and I just love him, and he's a great talent, you know. Whether you saw the movie Grandma a couple of years ago, but that, you know, he's extraordinary. He's a great writer and a great director, which is a very rare combination. You very rarely get that. And then Jason, dear Jason, who's a terrific actor, and who actually brought this book, he bought it and brought it to television. So we've got a lot to thank him. He's been away working on acting on gigs and movies and stuff. So we haven't seen him last year so much, but hopefully this year we'll see more of him.
You mentioned shooting internationally, and I wonder what that added to the show, in your opinion.
Well, a lot of stamps on the passport. That's one thing. You know, they want to move this out. They don't want it to be static. I presume, listen, I haven't talked to anybody at Amazon, but I would imagine this is part of the thinking, is that also, you know, it's very good to be shooting in Italy. I mean, it's the birthplace of a lot of great music, you know, Rossini, Puccini, and all this. So, and it's in Venice, which is classical music, you know. So it's great, I think, for their salespeople also, and to be in a place like Japan, the Far East, where they appreciate classical music, you know, as much as we do. So I think it's really great. I mean, I guess at some point we're going to have to hit Europe, you know, but I don't know. I think, you know, being in Japan is going to be really interesting.
Well, I mean, you know, the names we mentioned before, they're all come from a film background, and I think that shooting internationally adds to the cinematic quality of the show. Can you talk about, I mean, you've been around for a while. Are those two mediums, television and movies, blending a lot more, in your opinion?
Well, I think for an actor, there's no difference. You know, I like to get there early in the takes, you know, and do my thing. So I don't really want to go on and on and on and on. And you can't really in television, but that's actually not true. You certainly we don't sacrifice quality at all. So we'll go on until we get it. But you know, it's a much smaller time of shooting. So we shoot half an hour in 5 days, which is considered generous on television. So if it was an hour, that would be 10 days shoot. Normally an hour is 7. So put in that perspective, it's quite generous, and we need it because in New York, especially, moving around is not easy and is time consuming. If you're going to shoot part of it and then you're going to shoot, you know, another part down the block, that's 3 hours, you know, just to move 300 feet. But so we're always thinking about stuff like that. But I think honestly, if you can shoot in exotic locations, of course it's going to help. It's going to look like a movie, you know, way more like a movie, and that's important. But I honestly don't think, certainly not from the actor's point of view, that there's really any difference. You know, you maybe in the craft service, maybe you get better craft service on a movie. I don't know. Actually, it's hard to see how even that could be better. So I think we're in good shape.
Well, I think certainly in terms of storytelling, I mean, you've been able to play this character over 30 odd episodes. So, I mean, you are able to explore him more in depth in that way. If that makes any sense, what I just said.
No, that's totally true. Of course, you know, on a movie, you only get, you know, 90 minutes or whatever it is. And there's only so much you can do and so much of the arc. But when you're in a series, you know, you can go into something really in depth and really get right to the heart of it. And I think that's very important. And I think, you know, it's much more fun to be able to relax about this, knowing that you can cover that later on, you know, so that the arcs are much longer, if you like.
Mm-hmm. You've had such a long and great career. I just wanted to ask you about a couple of your credits while I have you, starting with If, one of my favorites, Lindsay Anderson. Being a part of that new wave of British cinema with people like Lindsay Anderson and Carol Rice and Ken Loach, I mean, what was that experience like for you early in your career?
Oh, my relationship with Lindsay Anderson was the most important relationship I ever had. It was more important than the relationship I had with my own father. He was a dear friend. He was an extraordinary director, great artist, you know, a very erudite, intelligent man, and an extraordinary person. In fact, you know, I became such good friends. I loved him so much that I did a one-man show about my relationship with him, which is actually they made into a movie called Never Apologize. So if you ever really want to know how I felt about him, that's the best way to find out. It's I think Warner's put it out. Anyway, it was very important. And, you know, we were the sort of angry generation, if you like, the rebels. It didn't last very long, but it was a great time to be making movies, a very exciting time. And the movies from that period are extraordinary. And, you know, you talk about If. Well, If was my first movie. And what a way to start off in this business, to be in such a great movie like that with a brilliant director, you know, who really guided me in everything that I do. Even today, I think, what would Lindsay think? It's extraordinary. But anyway, that's the way it is.
And then, of course, that led to Clockwork Orange, which I know I'm not the only person who asks you about that. But, you know, 46 years onward, people still watch that movie and love that movie. To have been a part of something that is so universally beloved, what is that like for you?
It's sort of bizarre. I'm not ever used to it. I'm always a little in awe of it, if you like, because you don't expect when you're making a movie to be talking about it 46 years later. And, we had our 40th anniversary, God knows, 50's coming up sooner than later, So, and people still love it. Kids, every generation finds it. And so it says to me that, there's something in that movie that young people cotton onto and take as their own. And I think, if I was to analyze it really, I think that it's the brilliance of Anthony Burgess's novel that Kubrick followed very closely and made it, of course, very cinematically and beautifully. But I think that the story about freedom of man to choose is a universal subject that never gets old. And especially today, I would say.
Absolutely. And working with Stanley Kubrick, what was that experience like?
Well, I could go on about him for hours and hours, but basically, of course, as a young man working with this genius, he was a very quiet man, very inquisitive, very intellectual, and absolutely brilliant. But he wasn't really interested in how the actor finds the thing. He could care less. He was more interested in the lights, how it looked, this, that, the framing, and everything else, because he was a stills cameraman, let's face it. And so I remember early on me asking him if he could give me a little help. What did he think about? And he looked at me and he goes, "Gee, Malk, that's why I hired you." And I was like, "Oh my God!" I was used to Lindsay Anderson. He'd talk to me for hours, And I said, "Well, Stanley, here's a call sheet. It says here S. Kubrick, director. How about a bit of direction?" Of course, he laughed. He just laughed, and he had a great sense of humor. And he goes, "No, Malcolm, it's up to you. Show me. Show me." And everything was show me. And I went, "No wonder you love Peter Sellers." Because Peter would do 50 voices and funny characters, and he'd pick one.
Mm-hmm. Well, Malcolm, thank you so much, and congratulations on Mozart in the Jungle. I look forward to seeing season 4.
Thanks so much. Take care.
You too. Thank you. Have a good one.